Raiders fans, things are heating up once again in Las Vegas, and the buzz surrounding this team has reached a whole new level. Sitting at 2 wins and 4 losses, the Raiders are in that uncomfortable spot where you can feel the uncertainty in every play, every drive, and every press conference. The locker room doesn't seem convinced, the fan base is losing patience, and the front office is staring down a critical decision that could shape the rest of the season. One name that keeps coming up in trade conversations? Jakobi Meyers. The veteran receiver has quietly become one of the most talked about players in the NFL rumor mill, and his situation with the Raiders has layers to it. Contract tension, locker room frustration, and a front office trying to decide whether to build for the future or fight for now. When you look at the big picture, it makes sense why Meyers has become the centerpiece of so many trade discussions. The NFL trade deadline is set for early November, and history shows that deals start flying in the final days before that date. Over the past 6 seasons, there have been nearly 90 trades in the month leading up to the deadline. So when people say trades never happen, that's just not true anymore. The league has evolved. Front offices are aggressive, and every struggling team has to ask itself the same question. Are we buyers or sellers? For the Raiders, at 2-4, that question cuts deep. This isn't a good 2-4 team. Even in moments where they've found a way to win, it hasn't felt right. Fans weren't celebrating after that ugly victory over the Titans. They were frustrated, exhausted, and questioning what direction this franchise is actually heading. The optimism that once surrounded the season opener has been replaced by doubt. Some players, according to reports, have started to wonder what exactly the coaching staff's plan is. There's confusion, there's frustration, and that's never a good sign when your season is barely halfway through. Jakobi Meyers, for his part, has already shown signs that he's ready for a change. Earlier this year, before the season even began, he quietly asked the organization to explore trade options. It wasn't a dramatic blow-up or anything like that. It was business. He's in a contract year. He wanted long-term security, and the Raiders made it clear they weren't willing to meet the number he and his agent were asking for. From what I've heard, Meyers was looking for something in the range of $17 to $18 million per season, maybe even more, depending on guaranteed money. The Raiders, meanwhile, stood firm and said no. They believed that number was too high, and since then, that relationship has felt strained. Things got even more complicated after the Raiders drafted 2 wide receivers in the most recent NFL draft. They took Jack Beck in the 2nd round and Dante Thornton Jr. in the 4th. Neither rookie has made a huge impact yet, but that's not really the point. The move spoke volumes about how the front office views the future. When a team drafts 2 receivers that high and refuses to extend its current number 1 option, that's a message. Actions speak louder than words. And the message seems to be that Meyers may not be part of the long-term plan. So here we are, a losing record, a receiver on an expiring deal, a locker room that feels uncertain, and a coaching staff trying to keep things afloat. If another team calls with an offer, do the Raiders pull the trigger? That depends entirely on what's on the table. From what's being discussed, if a team is willing to part with a 3rd-round pick or better, that could be enough to move Meyers. Anything less than that, and the Raiders might prefer to hold on. It's not just about the compensation right now. It's also about what happens if they keep him. If Meyers finishes the year strong and then walks in free agency for a big contract elsewhere, the Raiders could receive a compensatory pick in the 4th round in 2026. So, if the best offer they get now is a 4th-rounder, why make the deal early? Still, there's risk either way. Trading him means taking away Geno Smith's most reliable target. It means making life harder for your quarterback and your new offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, both of whom are trying to get this offense clicking. Smith needs stability and timing with his receivers, and Meyers has been that safety blanket, a dependable route runner who knows how to find soft spots in coverage. Without him, you're banking on rookies and unproven players to carry that load. That's not ideal when you're already struggling to stay competitive. On the other hand, keeping Meyers might not make sense if you're truly rebuilding. If you know you're not going to pay him what he wants, you might as well get something back now instead of letting him walk for free later. That's the dilemma the Raiders face. It's not an easy one, and it's made more complicated by the fact that several teams across the league are actively looking for a wide receiver right now. The Buffalo Bills are desperate after that sluggish Monday night performance. The New England Patriots could use another weapon, and Meyers has history there with Josh McDaniels. The New York Giants, the Washington Commanders, the Buccaneers, all teams rumored to be exploring receiver trades. And speaking of Tampa Bay, multiple sources have suggested that the Buccaneers might be the team most interested in Meyers. There's reportedly been some contact between the two sides, and given Tampa's situation with injuries, the fit makes sense. Meyers would immediately upgrade their offense and give Baker Mayfield another reliable target to pair with Mike Evans. It's early, but it's something to watch closely as the deadline approaches. Meanwhile, the Raiders continue to tinker with the roster in smaller ways. They recently signed offensive guard McClendon Curtis to the practice squad, a player who had a solid college career, went undrafted, and later spent time with the Seattle Seahawks. He's not a blockbuster signing by any means, but it's an interesting move. Curtis fits the mold of what the Raiders like in linemen: tough, versatile, and coachable. There's already speculation that he could find his way onto the active roster before the end of the season. And while we're talking about roster moves, don't be surprised if guard Dylan Parham's name comes up in trade talks as well. The front office has been high on Alex Kappa, and if Curtis impresses in practice, Parham could become expendable. All of this goes to show that the Raiders are in a period of transition. The team isn't blowing things up yet, but there's definitely a sense that change is coming. Whether that means trading key players like Jakobi Meyers or quietly retooling through smaller deals, the message is the same. This organization is still trying to figure out who they are. There's no clear identity, no consistent spark, and that's dangerous territory in a league where momentum means everything. Fans are feeling it too. Raider Nation has always been passionate, but there's a noticeable frustration in the air right now. They've watched this team cycle through coaches, coordinators, and quarterbacks year after year, only to end up in the same place, hovering around mediocrity, hoping for something to finally click. It's not that the roster lacks talent. It's that the execution and leadership have been inconsistent. Every win feels like a temporary bandage instead of a real step forward. So, where do the Raiders go from here? That depends on what kind of organization they want to be. If they truly believe in Geno Smith and Chip Kelly, then they'll prioritize building around them, which means keeping their best weapons intact, at least for now. But if this front office is already looking ahead to the next draft and thinking long-term, then trading Meyers could be the move that signals a new direction. One way or another, the clock is ticking. The trade deadline waits for no one, and the Raiders have some big decisions to make before time runs out. As trade rumors swirl, the conversation naturally shifts to the other side of the equation. If the Raiders decide to be buyers instead of sellers, who could they realistically go after? Because let's be honest, this team still has holes all over the roster, and even if you somehow manage to keep Jakobi Meyers, there are plenty of areas that need serious reinforcement. From the offensive line to the secondary, from edge depth to linebacker help, the Raiders are still trying to find that balance between competing now and preparing for the future. And with the deadline approaching, they might just try to make a low-risk, high-reward move that can keep the locker room from completely unraveling. Let's start with the offense. Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, and the entire coaching staff have made it clear they're sticking with Geno Smith as their guy, which means protecting him has to remain the priority. The offensive line hasn't been terrible, but it hasn't been good enough either. Too many stall drives have come from pressure breaking through the middle or missed assignments on the edge. If the Raiders could find an experienced interior lineman who comes cheap, it would make a lot of sense. That's why the signing of McClendon Curtis to the practice squad raised some eyebrows. He's not a household name, but the staff clearly sees potential. If he develops quickly, maybe he can fill a gap that's been causing headaches all season. But the real intrigue is on defense. The secondary has been a problem for years, and even with a few flashes of improvement, the inconsistency is still there. Opposing quarterbacks are targeting that group relentlessly, and the lack of depth has been exposed week after week. So, it's no surprise that defensive backs have become a key focus in trade speculation. A few names have been thrown around, but one that keeps coming up is Kyle Duggar from New England. He's physical, he's versatile, and he fits perfectly into the kind of three safety looks the Raiders like to use. The question is whether the Patriots are willing to move him and, more importantly, whether the Raiders are willing to take on his contract. Then there's Roger McCreary from Tennessee. He's another player who's been linked to trade talks, and honestly, it would be a smart pickup if the price is right. McCreary has the kind of quickness and instincts that could immediately upgrade the nickel position. He's young, under contract, and hungry, the exact type of player a team like the Raiders should be targeting. The Titans, on the other hand, are struggling and might be open to making moves if it helps them gather future assets. For the Raiders, that's an opportunity. A trade for McCreary would give them flexibility in the secondary, allowing guys like Darren Porter and Eric Stokes to play more naturally on the outside while solidifying the inside coverage. Of course, there's also the dream scenario, a trade for Riq Woolen. Now, that's the type of move that would shake things up. Woolen is young, tall, and athletic, the kind of corner that Pete Carroll absolutely loves. He's the prototype for that aggressive, physical defensive style Carroll built his reputation on back in Seattle. Woolen would instantly become a cornerstone piece for the defense, someone to build around for the next several years. The problem? It's going to cost you. Seattle isn't just going to give away a player of that caliber for cheap. So unless the Raiders are willing to part with serious draft capital or a player of value, that might be more of a fantasy than a realistic option. Still, it's fun to imagine a Raiders secondary with that kind of athleticism and swagger. Another name floating around the rumor mill is Anfernee Jennings, an edge rusher from New England. There's been some talk about a potential player-for-player type deal involving Jennings if the Raiders decide to move Jakobi Meyers. It's not the most exciting trade on paper, but if you're trying to add some physicality to your front seven, Jennings could be a solid addition. He brings effort, versatility, and he's still young enough to grow within Patrick Graham's defensive scheme. However, if the Raiders are going to make any kind of trade that involves giving up their best receiver, they'll likely want picks, not just players. Draft capital is the currency of the rebuild, and Las Vegas can't afford to shortchange itself by making emotional or rushed deals. What makes all of this even more complicated is how unpredictable the trade deadline has become in recent years. In the past, most NFL teams were conservative. They didn't like making mid-season trades, especially for key players. But that's changed dramatically. Now, general managers are treating the deadline more like the NBA or MLB. If there's a chance to upgrade, they go for it. And if a team like Tampa Bay, New England, or even the Rams calls about Meyers, it could set off a domino effect that changes how the Raiders operate for the rest of the year. And here's the thing. Even if the Raiders don't trade for any of the big names, they could still make smaller, smart moves that pay off later. Maybe it's a rotational defensive tackle. Maybe it's a special teams ace who can also play safety. Those kinds of deals often fly under the radar, but end up being the ones that make a difference when injuries hit in November and December. The key is knowing which players fit your system. And right now, that's what the Raiders front office has to prove it understands. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Las Vegas Raiders. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Whispers are swirling around the league that veteran center Garrett Bradbury has inked a deal with the Las Vegas Raiders, sending ripples through both locker rooms and front offices across the NFL. While the team has yet to make an official announcement, multiple sources close to the situation hint that Bradbury's signature is already dry on the dotted line, marking what could be one of the quietest yet most impactful offseason moves for the Silver and Black. Bradbury, formerly the anchor of the Minnesota Vikings offensive line, brings both experience and leadership to a Raiders unit that has been searching for stability up front. The Raiders' offensive line was a mixed bag last season, moments of promise overshadowed by inconsistency, particularly in the interior. With Bradbury's addition, that could change dramatically. Known for his intelligence, agility, and ability to call protections effectively, he fits perfectly into the physical identity new head coach Antonio Pierce has been preaching since taking over full-time. Insiders suggest that the Raiders moved swiftly after internal evaluations showed the need for a dependable center who could elevate the young guards around him. Bradbury, a first-round pick in 2019, has faced his share of scrutiny during his career, but has steadily evolved into a technician with a high football IQ and one of the league's most reliable snap-to-snap performers. The move also signals something deeper, a shift in philosophy. After years of building around flashy skill players, Las Vegas seems committed to constructing a team from the trenches out. With Bradbury in place, the Raiders' offensive line suddenly looks tougher, more cohesive, and better equipped to protect whoever lines up under center this season. If the rumors hold true, this might be the kind of under-the-radar signing that pays major dividends come December. For now, Raider Nation waits for confirmation, but if the buzz is real, Las Vegas may have quietly found its missing piece in the heart of the line. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Las Vegas Raiders, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.